tweeted some ridiculous things. You tweeted at one stage, "Would I like Rachel Jeantel to fly my plane?" Why would you say that?
I'll tell you why I said that, Pierce. I'll tell you why I said that, because after you interviewed her, you condescendingly went on television the next morning and called her one smart cookie. Bull. Why don't you hire her as a nanny? Let's see how smart she is. It's a condescending kind of thing that a lot of white people say to black people. I think you're stupid for saying that kind of thing to try to get black people.
That wasn't my question.
That race and racism.
Do you think Rachel Jeantel is...
when it doesn't?
All right. Larry Elder, who we just spoke to a little while ago in this hour on the Steve Malzberg Show, going at it with Pierce Morgan. We talked to him about that conversation. And joining us now is the man who wrote about that conversation, our friend, associate editor at Newsbusters.org. And by the way, before we start, Mr. Noel Sheppard, Mazel Tov, congratulations on the marriage of your son.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, congratulations. That's why Noel wasn't with us last week, but he's back. And okay, let's talk about what just took place. The reaction to Larry Elder, African-American talk show host and author, telling it as he sees it, and many would say like it is, and going at it with Pierce Morgan resulted in, let's just say, some very disturbing social media response.
Very disturbing. I mean, Twitter absolutely exploded on Wednesday. Actually, during Elder's discussion with Morgan, people were tweeting some really disgusting, vulgar racial epithets at Elder. And it's just, this is another example of you're really not accepted in the African-American community unless you're a liberal. You can't have conservative ideas and be treated with any kind of respect. The barrage of really disgusting tweets that we could not read, but N-word and F-word, and it really boggles the mind here. And you know, when President Obama got up today to discuss his opinion about the Trayvon Martin case, maybe he could have also discussed on the left and some African Americans their insensitivity towards conservative views within their own community is also part of the problem here. I mean, you know, Charles Barkley, and I don't know whether you're going to get to him, but I think Charles Barkley came out yesterday and made a great statement saying, you know, black people are racist too, and I think that they're especially racist towards black conservatives. They seem to lose all dignity and all grace and all manners when it comes to anyone in the black community not completely towing the left-wing line on things.
Absolutely,
really sad.
Absolutely, Noel. And I want to play for you cut 7. Charles Barkley saying what you just said. He said also you wrote about, of course, Charles Barkley's reaction to the verdict. He said that he agreed with the verdict, and here's what he said about racism.
I don't like when race gets out in the media because I don't think the media has a pure heart, as I call it. There are very few people who have a pure heart when it comes to race. Racism is wrong in any shape, form. There are a lot of black people who are racist too. I think sometimes when people talk about race, they act like only white people are racist. There are a lot of black people who are racist. And I don't like when it gets out there in the media because I don't think the media has clean hands.
Wow, I mean, good for Charles.
Really shocking statement by Charles. And once again, I mean, immediately Twitter exploded about this with the same kind of vulgar racial epithets. And Charles, as a former NBA star, now is a sportscaster on, I think it's TNT for the NBA. Very, very well-respected man, certainly in the black community. But he's not allowed to say anything that doesn't completely toe the line of the left. And, I mean, the same kind of disgusting tweets that were thrown at and also were thrown at Bill Cosby, who also made some comments. So, you know, you've got...
All right, you know what? No. I want to stay where you are. I want we disconnect your Skype or get to your phone because we're going to call you on your phone. We're having a little trouble with the Skype connection. So,
okay.
Yeah. So so we're going to call you right now. We're talking to Noel Sheppard, associate editor of Newsbusters.org, here on the Steve Malzberg Show, talking about Charles Barkley, who weighed in on the verdict on CNBC yesterday and said that he thought it was a just verdict. and also talked about the fact that he doesn't believe the media has clean hands when it comes to talking about race, and said that blacks could be racist as well. All right, you're back, Noel. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so very, and there was it just seems, there's this myth. To me, it's the same myth perpetrated by the same people, and Al Sharpton's at the center of it all. Al Sharpton made racial profiling, I was just talking about before you came on, into this dirty, filthy word, and when the whole thing started on the New Jersey Turnpike with some New Jersey state troopers who were found guilty of harassing and pulling over blacks in cars for no reason. That's not racial profiling. That's harassment and against the law. Racial profiling, like any other profiling, is good police work and good way for people to do what they have to do. Just the same here. Al Sharpton made a statement once that blacks can't be racist because they have no power, whatever that means. So that's become accepted. And when you get people like Larry Elder or Charles Barkley who state the obvious and the opposite, they're viewed as some kind of traitor.
Well, and what's scary here, I think, and it should be scary for people on both sides of the aisle and people of all races and colors and creeds, is if we're going to have a discussion about race in this country, then let's do that. But it can't be a one-sided discussion. It's got to be an open-ended discussion with people being allowed and tolerated to be able to speak their mind about these issues without being attacked. And unfortunately, I don't think that that's what the media are going to do. I certainly don't think that's what MSNBC is going to do, or NBC or ABC or CBS. I think that if this now is going to turn into some type of a legislative discussion where something is going to now come either through the House or through the Senate to address this issue, and I'm really not sure how that's going to be. But certainly the president coming out and addressing the nation this morning, he was certainly trying to move something forward legislatively here, not that any of us really knows what that's going to be. But if that is indeed the case, can we discuss this issue like adults? Can we discuss this issue with both sides being allowed to be heard, or is only one side going to be allowed to be heard? And when I say side here, I don't even mean race, because people like Bill Cosby and Larry Elder and Charles Barkley and conceivably others in the black community, they're not going to be allowed to voice their opinions on this if the opinion doesn't completely toe the line of what the left is espousing. So how do we have an honest discussion on this issue when only one side is allowed to speak?
You absolutely can't. There's not an honest discussion on the verdict. There's not an honest discussion on race. And two things that could jump out at me yesterday. I was watching Piers Morgan. I almost emailed you, to have you commiserate with me, but I never got around to it. Jesse Lee Peterson, Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson, conservative. He was in the middle between a guy from the Central Park jogger case who was arrested and then let go because he was in jail on false pretenses or something, and another reverend, a female reverend from Massachusetts, and they couldn't have been more disrespectful to Jesse Lee Peterson, saying, where'd you get this guy from? Who is he? What does he talk in front of him while he's trying to talk? It was outrageous. So your point that the other side, whether they're black or white, is not going to be allowed to be heard, that was a perfect example.
Well, and the other thing that I think that is sad here, it would have been interesting for the media, once the verdict came down, to actually engage in a little bit of an education on how our criminal justice system actually works. Because as you know, and I know, our justice system is specifically set up to err on the side of the defense. It always has been, and it's because we as a society, unlike Great Britain, we're we're more comfortable with a guilty person being set free than an innocent person being wrongly incarcerated.
Right.
So we err towards the defendant. What that means as a result, it's very, very difficult for the prosecution to win cases. This was an unwinnable case for the prosecution because there was not a witness that came forward and refuted Zimmerman's take. In fact, there was a witness who came forward and basically supported what Zimmerman had said. So rather than inflaming the situation like they did from Saturday through now, what good media outlets should have done, and I realize I'm dreaming, but maybe I shouldn't be dreaming here, because this is a very, very simple matter of law. You could have brought any number of attorneys, judges, prosecutors on, whether we're talking about CNN or MSN, well, forget about MSNBC, but whether we're talking about CNN or ABC.
Like everybody else has forgotten about him,
Everybody else, forget about MSNBC because that's a joke. But everybody else could have educated the public on why this was the correct verdict. And by the way, that doesn't mean that Zimmerman was innocent. That doesn't mean that Zimmerman wasn't guilty. What it means is there wasn't enough evidence to find him guilty. This is what should have been on all of the broadcasts Saturday evening. Well, it wouldn't have been Saturday evening because it happened too late. But Sunday, all of the talk, this is what the discussion should have been. Let's educate the public about why this verdict was correct and how our system works, rather than tearing it apart and just adding to the misinformation. And by the way, also adding to the ignorance.
Of course. And we're talking to Noel Sheppard, associate editors at Newsbusters.org here on the Steve Malzberg Show. And of course, Noel, they had no interest in doing that. What I would like to see is the study where you take the remarks made, or maybe count them up or something. This would be an arduous task, of the analysis of the trial in the week leading up to the verdict. Even in the closing arguments, where overwhelmingly on CNN, and I watched mostly CNN during the analysis, to be honest with you, and Anderson's panels and the other panels, even Pierce Morgan at one point admitted it doesn't look good for the prosecution. Yet when the verdict came out, it was universal, what? This has to be racist. Well, where did that come from?
There were even people on MSNBC, Chris Matthews is one of them, who said, when you look at what's been presented at this point, it seems very, very difficult to imagine that he's going to be found, he meaning Zimmerman, is going to be found guilty. That's right. That's right, because you didn't have one witness come forward and refute Zimmerman's story.
Right.
You can't win a case as the prosecution without one, and even the circumstantial evidence that they had.
Right, but my point is, and your point is, right, the networks, all these people who are claiming racism now knew all this, said all this, and then I guess expected like a magic verdict, and when they didn't get it, they claim racism. And not only that, if they had any interest in educating the public instead of putting forth the Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson agenda, sitting there and listening to Jesse Jackson call Florida an apartheid state and calling for a UN investigation and saying, thank you, Reverend. I mean, you might as well just take your journalism and career and just jump out the window with it, because you got to be insane not to challenge him on that. But having said all that, there's an alternate black juror. First of all, the jury isn't all white, as they keep telling us. There was a half black, half Hispanic woman, supposedly. That's number one. Number two, yesterday an interview was done down in Florida by a Fox affiliate, and Fox News played this, and I haven't seen it anywhere else. And they could have injected it into the conversation, but it wouldn't fit their agenda. An alternate black male member of the jury, said he agreed with the verdict. Well, that wouldn't fit the racist verdict theory, so they just ignored that.
Well, they also ignored, I don't know whether you saw this, I imagine you did, that there was actually a black potential juror.
Yeah, the Fox News, I got that. Yeah, tell us.
Who was excused because he was a Fox News watcher. Imagine that. I mean, the other thing that...
Well, I want to play that, Noel. I want to play that. And this came to light on CNN, believe it or not. This is how it sounded. It'll be 26. This is how it came about on CNN, where we found out about the potential black juror who the prosecution didn't want. 26.
The odds of getting an African-American on the jury are very slim when you're in Seminole County.
Although, if I remember correctly, one of the prosecutors struck a potential black juror from the jury.
Yeah, he was also he was also a Fox News watcher.
So that was, problematic for the prosecution.
All right, that was first Mark Najam, and then it was Carol Costello, the host, and that was Michael Skolnick, political director to Russell Simmons. Anyway, so this whole thing is just totally insane. No, what we are witnessing is an issue fabricated out of whole cloth, a national conversation, a national agenda being pushed about nothing.
About basically nothing. And that's not to diminish.
No, the tragedy is there, but it's not about race.
That's right. That's right. And what was interesting is it pronounced Najam or Najam, whichever. What was interesting
I don't know. Yeah.
And I really wish that there had been more discussion about this, because we never really got a great media discussion other than disdain about the fact that it was supposedly 6, they always said white women on the jury. Okay. So we could have educated the public about how juries are selected. We could have explained what Najam was saying, that, well, first of all, it's very, very unlikely that you're going to get a black on a jury in Seminole County,
right,
because of the demographics of the county. Okay, number one. Number two, so therefore, the other question being, why was it just women? You and I both know the prosecution wanted women. If the prosecution's first choice would be a black person, obviously not a Fox watcher. Second choice would be a woman. Why? Because you're trying to pull at the heartstrings of the woman who has children to make her identify with the loss of this child. A man is more likely, and certainly a white man is more likely, to potentially side inherently with Zimmerman,
with the gun guy. And Noel, you're right. And in fact, the coverage that I watched, again, mostly on liberal CNN, even those who thought that Zimmerman should spend the rest of his life in jail, they thought that the women, how many times did Sonny Houston say, oh, you should have seen those jurors when the prosecution said this, when the prosecution said that. They're mothers, she would say. They understand. Hey, and in the closing arguments, she kept calling the prosecutor McDreamy, and then she said he was McWonderful, and she actually said in the closing rebuttal, he had them at hello. So she either misread them totally, or they're a bunch of racists, I guess, right?
Right. So again, throughout this process, there's so much that the media could have properly informed and educated the public. If we're really going to watch a trial this closely,
right,
and we're going to examine a trial this closely for the 2 weeks that it went on, you really could have taken the opportunity to fully educate the public about what the process is, and how, trust me, in this situation, the prosecution got the jury they wanted.
Yep,
now,
absolutely.
Again, they would have preferred black non-Fox News watchers, but obviously those weren't there.
Yeah, no.
So they went right for the women. This was a prosecution jury. Trust me.
Noel, we've known this for quite some time, but it just keeps getting. We had Brent Bozell on talking about how it all relates to the election with his great new book, but we've lost this media. I got to go. Noel, it's been fascinating. Noel Sheppard, ladies and gentlemen, associate editor of Newsbusters.org. Thank you, sir.